Tonight's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by the upcoming horror movie The Endless. Brad Miska at Bloody Disgusting says it's strange, bizarre, twisted, manipulative, and completely original. You know, everything horror fans keep begging for. Acclaimed filmmakers Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson return from their 2014 cult hit Spring with this mind-bending supernatural thriller about two brothers who revisit the UFO death cult they escaped as teens, only to find there may have been truth to the cult's otherworldly beliefs all along. In theaters now from Wellgo USA. Check for Showtime's TheEndless-Movie.com. And keep checking the Shockwaves Facebook page because we will be giving away some awesome merch and copies of The Endless soon, including a limited edition blacklight poster and copies of the Blu-ray. I have seen this movie and it is awesome.
Today's episode of Shockwaves is also brought to you by Shudder. Brought to you by AMC Networks, Shudder is not only a premium streaming video service, but an experience unlike any other. Created for fans of all degrees of thrillers, suspense, and horror, Shudder is home to the largest and fastest-growing human-curated selection of high-quality, spine-tingling, and provocative films, TV series, and originals, and there's always something new and unexpected for Shudder members to explore.
Premiering only on Shudder this week is the new limited event series Born to Kill. Sam is embarking on his first romance with fellow teenager Chrissy, who's moved to the area after family turmoil of her own. But things are about to take a much darker turn. Beneath the surface of his charismatic persona, Sam is experiencing more than the usual teenage angst, a psychopathic urge to kill. His family and friends have no idea what he is capable of. Only his victims know the chilling truth, and they're not talking anymore.
Ooh, Born to Kill features a terrific lead performance by Peaky Blinders' Jack Rowan and a stunning, moody look. Born to Kill is your next binge-worthy series and is now streaming only on Shudder. Shudder is available for $4.99 a month and $49.99 with an annual membership, but our listeners can get a free month by entering promo code SHOCK at checkout. Go to Shudder.com today and find the best collection of thriller, suspense, and horror available to stream anywhere.
In just a few weeks, the Shockwaves team is heading to Texas Frightmare, and we hope to see all of you there. Texas Frightmare is the Southwest's premier horror convention, and it's now celebrating its 13th year. They always have the best guests, the best panels, and you don't want to miss it. This year's guests include Clive Barker, several of the Cenobites, including Doug Bradley, all the kids from It's Losers Club, Tobin Bell, Shawnee Smith, Ron Perlman, Charlie Band, Brad Dourif, Katie Featherston, and many more. Plus, the Shockwaves team will be there moderating all the fantastic panels. We have a live Shockwaves show, and we'll be doing Dead Right Horror trivia. Head to www.texasfrightmareweekend.com and get your tickets now. Elric Kane really wants you to come touch his face.
Hello and welcome to episode 92 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Galluzzo. I'm sitting here with Mr. Elric Kane.
Yeah, man, we survived. We're ready to roll.
Good God, we did survive quite an ordeal. You'll have to tune in next week.
Yeah, to get the whole story.
Live from Chattanooga Film Festival to hear.
Live from, I guess, kind of, yeah. Oh,
yeah, it is live from.
Live from the past, yeah.
There's vomit involved.
Good God, wait to hear the Kane stories.
It's crazy.
That's your
much
hook.
whiskey.
My witness to all this madness was Rebekah McKendry.
It was. Mm-hmm. They put us all in the same Airbnb, so it was like real world Shockwaves.
Totally.
And
we should have went on Facebook Live.
I know.
That would have been interesting.
I think it just would have been like, Elric, are you done with the stove? You didn't wash your dishes, man. You didn't. So,
yeah, we didn't do it. We should have done a mock, but it wouldn't have been the same without our other host.
That's true. Ryan Turek.
Clearly the adult supervision.
Yeah. Which is always needed.
Hey, I didn't. Wait, I did break the ironing board. I didn't break it.
My God.
It wouldn't close.
Yeah.
I don't
like
think
chaos.
I broke it. Yeah,
we know how to party.
Chaos.
That's the thing. We know how to party.
Ryan would have kept us in line.
Puke and ironing boards. That's all it was.
So welcome to episode 92. Lot to talk about. Obviously, we want to talk about what we saw at the festival, movies that we've all collectively seen, etc. I just want to bring up really quick, this weekend for people in Los Angeles is Monsterpalooza.
Yay!
Which is very exciting.
When are you going?
I think I'm going to be there all weekend, actually. I have a pass for the weekend, but I am doing a presentation on a panel on Saturday at 2 p.m., showing trailers for all the Dread Central titles, Dread Central Presents, and then culminating with the premiere of the Director's Cut trailer. This is the Penn Jillette Adam Rifkin movie, and Adam will join me on stage along with Missy Pyle, and we'll do a little thing there and sign posters. And then I believe Kane Hodder is going to be there he's there all weekend. but he is doing a presentation for his documentary, To Hell and Back, The Kane Hodder Story, on Sunday.
I'll also do a quick event plug up at the top here. This weekend, my film, All the Creatures Are Stirring, is playing at the Phoenix International Horror and Science Fiction Festival.
And by the way, Bekah, congratulations.
Thank you.
For taking the Audience Award at the Chattanooga Film Festival.
Yes, it was very unexpected. I cried. I literally
It plays really well with an audience. It's a good audience film,
it
which
was
is nice.
it was great hearing everybody laugh and really kind of receive it well. So yeah, it played great with both screened twice there and played really well both times. And we're screening at the Phoenix International Horror and Science Fiction Festival this coming weekend. We're playing on Saturday and Sunday night. Saturday night is sold out, but there are still tickets available for Sunday.
That's great. That's great. And before we delve into films that we saw at the festival, because obviously we collectively were able to see a lot of things together, which is nice. I think we need to talk about A Quiet Place. Elric and I had several hours to kill on our last day on Monday, and so we went to the theater together and we're like, let's go see A Quiet Place before we head back to LA.
You also went to the greatest restaurant in Chattanooga,
several times. Aretha Frankenstein's. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was quite wonderful. Wonderful pancakes.
So the fact that you got to do that and The Quiet Place, I'm jealous of, because my flight left at 4 a.m. and sucked.
Yeah, that does suck. Yeah. No, we were a little smarter back, a little later out.
Well, the main thing we need to talk about is how A Quiet Place shall be the movie that all movie theaters will be constructed around.
They should.
Because
and
we were at a really fancy theater.
We were at a great AMC
Beautiful
theater.
AMC, huge.
And man, did we hear a lot of that blockbuster movie that was right next door.
The first half of that movie, we could hear so
Ready
much
Player One?
of the action.
Just getting a little
maybe.
It could have been. It was
Probably.
better Black Panther, and it was. It definitely did hurt it.
Yeah, sweeping score and action
painful.
kind of just seeping in through the side. So as much as I enjoyed this film in the theater, this was actually the one time I was like, I kind of wish I was watching this at home so I can control the environment. It also makes you very aware of the audience because you could hear the person next to us crunching their popcorn and then making stupid observations.
Oh, she's pregnant. And you're like, yeah, no shit.
Elric and I were just like,
It also gives you an awareness of just how sick and diseased everybody is.
As I coughed off to the side.
I went to go see it a second time over the weekend, and it reminded me of that scene in Outbreak where everybody's sitting in the theater and you see that one person cough and you follow the germ molecule fly through
water
the air.
vapor through the air into somebody else's nose.
well, that said, sound issues aside.
No, let's just talk about construction.
Elric and I loved it. I think Elric did too. I think we had a great time regardless of that.
Yeah, it's a brilliantly crafted suspense film. And I don't know why I compare it to Hush, but I still kind of like Hush more. But only because I think it's a little weirder. Yeah. I think A Quiet Place is like perfect for a blockbuster. It's the perfect Hollywood blockbuster. It's exactly what you want. But like, you know how sometimes you just want that like slightly weird off quality as a horror fan?
Yeah.
Though they would still make a beautiful double feature. I mean, that'd be so much fun. But yeah, just it's so well put together, and as it's even more suspense than horror. Really, it's like suspense sci-fi in many ways. But man, it has a real setup and payoff, and leaves right at the right moment. It's a movie. It doesn't overstay its welcome at all.
I'm sure a lot of people have probably already seen it, but just the very basic gist and why sound is such an important issue is because obviously there's no real explanation, but there are monsters out there, and they're attracted to sound, and so they've pretty much wiped everybody out. And so we're with a family, which is what's his name? John Krasinski of The Office, who also directed this and is great in it, along with his real life wife, Emily Blunt. And so they are a family trying to survive in this world. And so the majority of it revolves around how quiet everything is. And also one of their daughters is deaf. And so we kind of get that perspective going back and forth. But that's kind of it really does help suspense. And, you know, it'll be fun to talk to the Platinum Dew guys about that, or in particular Krasinski. The film that came to mind, which has nothing to do with it at all, and I know Elric will know this, is the French film Le Cercle Rouge, which is one of my favorite foreign films. And the reason being is because the film revolves around a heist, and there's a good 20-25 minute chunk where these characters are pulling off the heist, and it is all silence.
It's all processed, and it really pulls you in.
Yeah, and you literally lean forward, not realizing you're doing it, but it's just because you're waiting to hear something. And so that's what this movie does beautifully, is it really plays with sound in a way that just brings it to front and center. And
the family dynamics that are affected by not being able to really talk. By being able to talk openly. Instead, it becomes this thing, so they all have weird things around each other and emotional hang-ups. That's the part that's really engaging.
It's the emotional core, especially between father and daughter.
Really.
Second time around, you can really start to kind of dig into the water cooler logic of it all. There are a lot more questions that are raised from the second experience where you're kind of like, why would you even do that? Or how could you effectively pull this off without creating sound? And, once you kind of just sweep those under the rug and just allow yourself to have some fun with it. It is very well crafted.
Yeah, it's not perfect in that regard. Like I have a lot of issues with it. And also I guess like Elric said, I just wish there was a little more to it. It's pretty simple.
Well,
there's a few great set pieces. But I wish there was just a little more.
I would say next time you see it, pay attention to his basement, his sound room. There's a lot of clues and a lot of details throughout that give a little bit more insight into the monsters. There were a lot more things I picked up the second time around.
Oh, wow.
In terms of how our government responded to these things and what they tried to counteract and where they came from.
Is it true that it was developed at one point as a Cloverfield film or not?
I didn't pay attention to those articles.
Okay.
I have enjoyed some of the articles. I have not seen it yet, but I have enjoyed some of the articles that have come out of it, like the major media saying, well, horror's back, or horror's the next big thing, or CNN had a thing
or
of like, horror's making some noise.
It's not horror.
So that part is nice, but then I've also enjoyed the online discussions about general day-to-day life. Like there was an entire long discussion about how do you fart?
Oh yeah, that's right.
If
That's
you
everyone's
cannot,
hang up,
and the fact that this movie made that discussion happen, I'm kind of like, or sneeze was another one I heard, or cough and things like that. How do you do these basic kind of functions where you can't stop the sound?
You don't, you die.
You die. You die. So that's all there is.
Yeah, but that one was excellent.
And definitely a big screen. I mean, well, besides our experience on a big screen, I think in general, a real great big screen, because it's just, you don't go to movies often where the audience is forced to fucking pay attention, forced to stay quiet. So it's interesting that way.
Yeah.
Also, a little trailer dropped this week that I think we need to discuss.
Oh, it's so amazing.
For a movie called The Meg.
Ghost on Meg?
Ghost on Meg?
Ghost on Meg.
The multi-million-dollar sci-fi movie.
It does not follow the book, or does not seem to follow the book that closely, but goddamn, I'm excited about it. And that poster is just amazing. Like, I would put that in my living room.
It looks pretty out of control and ridiculous.
It looks exactly what it needs to be.
Yep.
I mean, it is the same kind of feeling I got from watching the trailer for Piranha 3D.
Yep.
It was like, okay, tongue is in cheek. We're going to have a blast with this. As long as you deliver on giant shark action, then I'm sold. And I was sold.
Cheesy shark action, bad action lines.
Oh, God.
You know.
Yeah, the whole the Mariana Trench. That, they're like, it is the deepest trench ever, but we've gone further. And it's like, oh my God, you're explaining all of this stuff for me right ahead.
As soon as
the megalodon is the largest shark in prehistoric history. Okay, thank you.
As soon as Jason Statham said something like, chew on this, I was like, I'm so in. That's all I need.
And also, it's your favorite director, Bekah, the director of the National Treasure movies.
I know.
John Turteltaub in the house.
Wow.
Dave,
it's like your dream.
Once we saw the trailer, Dave walked in and I was watching it, and he was like, it's literally like God made you a movie. And I'm like, I know, right?
Can you write a fan
by the
letter?
way, and your husband Dave is in it, sort of.
Kind of,
There's this great shot of a newspaper clipping of a is it a fisherman?
It's a fisherman inside these megalodon jaws, and literally Josh Forbes messaged me and it was like, this looks just like Dave, and it does.
Yeah,
It's
it
like identical to Dave.
Wow.
So apparently he's in the movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'll be fun. But it got me thinking, it's like, I guess Jaws has ruined shark movies. Like, you can't get better or more serious than that, I guess.
Well, it's the same principle that I try to apply to the kind of slasher genre. It's like I'm here hustling, trying to find possibly a great, scary, horrifying, realistic slasher film. Because after Scream, everybody just wants to put tongue in cheek and have a good time with it. And I feel like that's kind of like the same thing with Shark. It's like put your mind to it.
Yeah.
You could probably deliver.
The
Like
Shallows was pretty serious.
Yeah.
Like
The Shallows,
it has some ridiculous things that happen in the CGI.
Yes,
but she's pretty good, and the mood of it is meant to be
And there
serious.
were moments in 47 meters down that I
there's
was like,
some-
okay, that's generally terrifying.
But you are right. Like, once they go satire, it's hard hard to
I need to
reverse.
watch 47 Meters Down again. I do love that movie.
It is just fun.
It's not bad. And then, so we were at Chattanooga Film Festival and Bekah's movie premiered. So Elric and I got to see that. That was my second time seeing it, which was lovely.
I heard you talk about it at the top of the next one.
Yeah. But what about, I guess Elric and I went and caught William Friedkin's new documentary, The Devil and Father Amorth, which was a lean, I don't know, 65
It's like 65 minutes, yeah.
Really
barely a
It
feature.
feels like more like one of his investigative journalism things you'd see on a Friday night where he just walks towards camera and goes, "What is the soul? I'm William Friedkin. What is the devil?" It's pretty cool.
So that part's amazing.
Yeah, I love all
he
the
kind of
stuff with
hosts
him,
it
yeah.
because he's like, I'm William Friedkin.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I directed The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And now he's basically, it's a documentary of him filming and tracking a real life exorcism.
With the person, the father who has done the most exorcisms in the world.
Yes, which
and
is
who's like 91, 92 years old.
Father Amorth from the title. And so, I don't know. Me and Elric were like pumped because it's scary, this and that. I was extremely mixed on this.
See, I thought it was super interesting.
It was interesting, but I was very mixed and called me very skeptical because I felt like there wasn't really a lot to it. And there was a lot more questions raised than anything because he hosts it. Then you see the exorcism. And so the exorcism is like 30 minutes long.
And it's pretty much real time. He's the first person to ever be allowed in with a camera. No camera crew was allowed, just him.
It was just him.
And a camera.
Only camera, yeah.
But it's real time. So I think it's super, as you keep watching it, I think it's super interesting in that just fascinating, like, oh, I've never seen this process.
Right.
And it's very, it's a different kind of exorcism than what we would think of from his movies. And he talks about that. He's like, this isn't like the ones from my movies. This is like how it plays out.
Right,
and with a lot of her family in the room praying for her and the father on the,
I mean, you get into the vibe of it once it's happening, but like from the second she spoke, like my first inclination was like, all right, so what effect did they put on her voice? That's not her real voice. And he never did, like you'd think as a filmmaker who made The Exorcist, he'd afterwards be like, I just want you to know that we did not manipulate the audio. But no, it doesn't happen. And so I had a tough time buying it.
Yeah.
But then again,
but he shows it to all these neurosurgeons and stuff, and they're all like, I've never heard that sound come out of a human. The neurosurgeons are what made it for me, because the second half, after we watched the real-time exorcism, has all these, like the head of UCLA, surgical, like some of the best in the world, and they're all just trying to articulate. And there's this great Israeli surgeon who's kind of just like, he basically verbalized what I was thinking, which is, no, this is real. It's real to her. It's real to the priest. It's real to the people in the room because of their belief structure and how this is like to them going in for neurosurgery. They believe in it that much. So her reactions are coming from that part, a real place. Whether there's really a demon, he has no idea. And so it's fascinating when you see that power of belief. So even if things were manipulated, I don't think the situation's manipulated. I think we are watching people going through a real, whatever that is.
So does Friedkin present it? Like, I've seen exorcism documentaries before, and it's always either kind of siding with, yes, exorcism's real, there really is a demon, or they're likely insane, but everyone believes it, or is it somehow straight down the middle?
He's presenting a balanced thing, but he definitely, in my opinion, believes in it. I think he's come to that place in his life where, but he presents all sides. It's not. I don't think it's trying to push you one. But there's a sequence where they don't have on camera where he is more or less pushing you.
Kind of like,
more like the horror movie moment. But it's totally entertaining, and it's so short. Everyone has to watch it because it's like you're never going to get to see an exorcism.
And again, I was like, oh god, I just love Friedkin on camera, like because he's like Alfred Hitchcock and Alfred Hitchcock presents just that character. You know, the interesting things about this movie that I want to bring up, because we love. Well, first of all, we got to bring up your airplane pitch, because the woman in the film is an Italian woman named Christina.
She's really scary in it because she's she's really
who the hell is Christina? And then we saw either her or her doppelganger
on our plane.
It was like the woman looked exactly like her. Yeah. And so you and I are sitting on the plane, and what did you come up with?
I just turned to him and I go, "Exorcist on a plane."
Yeah, and I'm like, hey,
like who does not want to watch a film about it? All the passengers getting possessed.
I know, all the passengers. So we started pitching each other.
Could be jumping from person to person. You don't know who it is in the seat. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, almost better than Predator Purge, but not quite.
Not quite. But
Ryan's eyes can light up.
When you have hours to kill on a flight, these are the things
she really did look like her.
This is 13B, 13B.
Yeah. But it was creepy when this person walked on.
Oh my god! It's in the pilot. It's in the pilot. I totally can see this.
And here's the other thing. So of course, as soon as I got home, as most people do when they watch one of these like documentaries or histories or whatever specials, I went online and immediately tried to find everybody involved. Like, let me read about the father and whatever happened to Christina and listen to that. And so So I got the Wikipedia page for the father, and the most interesting thing on here is under controversies, it says views on Harry Potter and yoga.
Well,
Amorth was one.
How do you have controversial views on yoga?
I don't know, but Amorth was one of the voices that made public warnings to parents about J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novels, stating that the books attempt to make a false distinction between black and white magic when the distinction does not exist because magic is always a turn to the devil.
well.
So that is a true exorcist.
I've got 2 books written by him that are in my office.
Oh, yeah. He
that
wrote
you
a couple books.
Yeah, you should take a look at them. They're
Who's that?
fascinating.
Who wrote the book?
Father Amorth.
Oh, because there's another guy at the start who writes the book on the Prince of Darkness one.
Oh,
and he,
yeah,
at the
yeah.
very start opens just by going, you shouldn't make those movies like The Exorcist because that's what's keeping these things alive and keeping
Yeah.
the deep.
Cool.
And it's super
Yeah.
intense.
Let's keep doing it, guys.
So this is our last
Sounds fun.
podcast. We are going
So
to do the God
technically,
Squad.
this is like an incantation that we're doing
It
right
is. It is
now.
a
Sweet.
black
It
art.
sounds
you
way
believe.
more
Amen.
dangerous if we think of it like that.
That's the black arts.
Wow.
Do we go to November next?
Let's
Dare
go to
we?
November. Oh,
Have you
my
heard
gosh.
of November, Ryan?
I have.
Holy
So,
smokes.
All of us decided to go check out November at like noon on a Sunday.
Well, and partly because I'd heard from Matt Perrone, who runs the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival, a year ago. He said the best thing he saw this year was a film called November. I didn't know what the context. I thought it was like The Witch or something. From what he was kind of saying, I had no idea the tone. So I kept telling
Or
you guys,
February.
hey, we got to see November. If we don't miss it, we might never come out.
It was the one
So-
and only time it was playing
Yeah, played
during
one
the
time.
festival. So all of us made a point to go.
And it's
Yes.
in terms of tone, it is completely fascinating because it goes from
It's
absurdist
everywhere.
comedy to bizarre, not really
is
ever
bomb.
scary, but like
It's
super
never
unsettling
scary.
at times
it's
and strange.
unsettling. It's got this kind of folklorish quality.
Did you like it?
I enjoyed it while I was watching it.
Yeah,
I will
I
never
definitely
forget
liked
it.
it.
What was the? You gave us a great Dick Gruner quote right after. You compared it to a movie that.
Well,
he once,
it's a movie. I love Valerie and Her Week of Wonders.
Oh, I love
it's got
Valerie.
that, but he bought it on Criterion, having heard me talk about it. And after he watched it, he just came over and goes, "Hey, you can have this." he didn't say whether he liked it.
But
or not.
that's kind of
It's kind of that
exactly
kind of
how
thing,
I
yeah.
feel about November
Yeah.
because I don't know if I would have watched this at home by myself, but because I was in a theatrical setting, and it basically, I mean, it's what country is this from?
Estonia.
which I had never
Estonia.
seen an Estonian film. I don't believe.
And here's
so.
the thing: the tone is so. I mean, like literally for the 2 days after this, I could bring up any scene in the 2 hour running time that is so freaking bonk. We were just like, remember like that.
Scene where the guy ate the soap, or
And remember when the
scene-
guy was eating the soap because a woman like bathed in it that he was in love with, or the guy baked a
Yeah.
loaf with his shit and sweat in it,
Yeah.
or that weird wheel of bones that became a helicopter and
And
took,
it took a cow?
out.
It's
Yeah,
really got some of the
when
most
the guy
incredible
talked to the
visuals.
snowman about love for
But it's
an
also
hour.
it's also one of the best looking films you'll ever see.
Yeah,
is.
it was
It's
gorgeous.
photographed just like stunningly. It's just totally unique and one of a kind. And it,
So the whole setup, well, it almost, and I had to think about, like, and again, this is not a film I will watch again, but I will never
You
stop
will.
thinking about it. It functions almost like an anthology film where you are seriously watching the stories of about 6 different people, because you're watching what's going on in the manor house, and then you're watching the young man, and then you're watching the girl, and
but
then
the events are still always tied to her.
they're tied
It's a love
back.
story. Yeah.
But you're watching all of these different stories, and then they're kind of all tied back to her. But there's really, like, we establish her as the protagonist, but that said, we do not spend the bulk of the film with her. We spend it with these other characters. But the whole kind of setup of it is this whole mythology of the Krat. And the Krat, and I'm really paraphrasing this because I don't speak Estonian, is you construct a whole bunch of tools together to kind of look like a being.
A vessel of some sort.
And then you go to these crossroads and this kind of bacchanalian god appears. You sign away your soul and he will therefore put a soul into your Krat.
Yeah.
And the Krat will work for you, but if you ever stop giving the Krat jobs to do, it will kill you. And this is kind of
or the Krat won't
backdrop-
kill you. Your soul will go to the guy.
To the guy.
Yeah, in the Book of Blood.
And this is the backdrop of it.
Come on, get it.
It's true. I know. There was a lot.
I took
And one of the
notes.
things that, and again, this was me thinking days later, there is so much witchcraft established in this book
Yeah.
because we've got the Krat mythology, then we've got a witch who's casting love spells, then we've got this kind of shapeshifter girl who's able to turn into animals. But yet they all go to church, but never once do we see hide nor hair of Jesus.
Well, there's one shot with blood on him. right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he bleeds.
He's
Yeah.
bleeding.
The
He's
statue.
bleeding,
Yeah, he
I mean,
bleeds.
look, this is almost. I'm sure this is incoherent nonsense. Everything we're saying to you,
Which is pretty
because-
much the movie.
Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it nuts, but I think it's constricted from their point of view. I think it seems like they've tied together all these obviously mythology of their culture that we don't know about. You know,
But I
it
guess
seems
what I'm
to be-
saying is it's impossible to describe.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
something you just have to experience and go with it, and you will never see anything quite like it.
But you will see it because Oscilloscope have it, and their title came up up front, so
That's
it will
great.
come out in some way.
They will. And also, by the way, the Baron, the German Baron, it is Dieter Laser.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
yeah,
he was-
The one recognizable
That's
What
face.
do we
yeah.
know him from?
Human
Because
Human
Human
Centipede.
Centipede.
I kept thinking it was an older thing, like something like a Paul Morrissey.
No.
Blood for the
I
Actually,
Candle.
kept
that
saying
was.
he looked like Udo Kier, like
Yeah,
an older
he's,
Udo Kier. But
Yeah, he's good in it. He's got a great look.
he
on it.
is.
But
He's creepy.
it's totally fascinating. If you're into those kind of crazy visions, you'll dig it.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And then Bekah, I think all of us also saw Ghost Stories,
Yeah.
which I believe, Ryan, you talked about a couple episodes.
Yeah, and I still
was
don't know
great.
what I feel about it.
Oh, really?
I don't
liked
either.
it.
I don't.
This was the one that everyone kept pushing. That like, oh, you have to see it. It's really good. It's really solid. Elric saw it a day before me, and you pretty much loved it.
I love it. It's so hard to talk about without spoilers, but
Yeah.
kind of where it lands, I don't necessarily love that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting.
That's-
But I love
Well,
the
it's-
stories.
well,
The stories are
yeah.
freaking great.
Well,
And I
it's
guess
not
you should-
it's not the ending that you expect from the setup that's
Yeah,
there,
exactly.
which is this debunker
Yeah.
of the paranormal. Sets out on this journey because this other guy,
Had influenced him, yeah.
spoiler. But yeah, it's not where you expected it to go.
I wonder, I think it'd probably be really interesting to see a second time, because if I know
That's
the
what I wanna
information,
know,
I
yeah.
bet you I'll probably see it in a different. But either way, I just want to look at it like from the experience of experiencing a horror film is one of my favorites in theaters for the moment, for each story. I just loved each story.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah,
we
the
should
stories were
emphasize,
great.
even
Yeah.
though it's you're following one character who is a ghost debunker. I mean, that's the thing. The idea and the into this movie is so freaking good.
It's very promising.
It's basically an anthology because you are getting 3 different ghost stories, but you are following one character who sets up this guy and basically tells him you are the debunker to these are the ones I can never solve. So it's up to you. And so you go into each story, and there's some great suspense and scares set up in all of them.
Oh, yeah. And the greatest line of the whole year.
Oh yeah, which killed.
We didn't
It's
even see it in the same one, and
but
he
we
knew
talked
exactly
about
what
it,
we
and
were
we
talking
killed in my
There's a
screening as
line,
well.
yeah. There's a line in the second skit that literally had the entire audience
Yeah.
laughing. So it's really solid in that regard. I agree with Ryan. I border on hating the ending. Because basically, obviously, they tell you these 3 stories, and then they try to they try to resolve it, which again, I don't want to spoil.
know,
You need to see it. And I don't know how I felt about it. I'm like, okay, I get that, but man, everything else was so good.
It feels like it's
would-
from a different movie. It feels like it's
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
a very different movie, and there's just an emotional resolution that you don't get. And I don't know how I feel about that because it's handled very well. And
Yeah, it's beautifully made.
Yeah.
It's
beautifully
Stephen Schwartz,
made, and
yeah.
it's well acted, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I'm
everyone
approaching-
needs to see it. I
Yeah.
think it's one of those horror films that you'll
yeah.
all enjoy the actual, because some of them are like bothered. The guy going around with the flashlight and the
So
it's crazy.
good. Such
It's
a cool premise.
Yeah, really
No,
well
I'm
done.
approaching the ending very much like I did Tag, where I did not like the ending to Tag at all, but the ride to get there was so
Yeah.
good. I'll reprieve you for the last 10 minutes.
For me, this was definitely going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year, just in terms of the experience of watching the movie.
Yeah.
But I agree. I'm not in disagreement at all about the ending. I definitely took me back a bit, and we don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Yeah.
So.
And I think this one's already out in the UK, but it's coming out here April 20th. I think at the end of the month.
Yeah, and somebody next to me who saw it said he had seen the stage play of it in England and said it's just incredible. He says, like, when they do the car thing, it's like a car on stage and you're watching it
Oh,
move.
wow.
He just said it's like,
Wow.
I mean, he loved the movie too, but he was
incredible.
just like very fascinating.
Wow.
I'd love to have seen
That's
that.
terrific.
But yeah, great movie.
Oh boy, did you catch
So
anything
many.
else?
Yeah, I saw Dementia 2, which I talk about next show, but I'll say it's a trip. Like I had, and I honestly was not a fan of the first Dementia. But what Mike Teston and Matt Mercer literally shot Dementia Part 2 in 5 days. It has nothing to do with Dementia Part 1. They just decided to keep the title with it. And it's literally 3 people in one house, and the setup and the payoff, it's so good. It feels very much like a low budget Dead Alive. And so I had a blast with it. So I'm just
I think I talked to the director of that more than anyone this weekend, Mike Teston, a really nice guy, cinematographer as well. But
so yeah, I saw that one, and then the night, literally, like I was leaving at 4 a.m. And at midnight I was still watching The Ranger.
Oh yeah, I was there too.
Which I went to see, which is a lot of fun for parts, and then it gets really dark.
But see, I thought once it went dark is when it became fun, because it was like it becomes kind of a comedy.
Exactly.
Dark comedy. It's not really horror.
And I was wondering if that was just me, because I was so annoyed by the punk characters that when they started dying, I was almost cheering for the Ranger.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't on the side of the punks in the first act at all. Besides the lead girl, they're not likable. But once the Ranger comes in, he's kind of like a funny maniac cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to come back from the sin that they commit at the very beginning of the movie. It's just like, okay, if you guys all deserve what you're going to get.
Right, it's tough.
And then when they were like painting trees and shit, that's a no in my book. You don't fucking paint trees. But yeah, like they were just generally assholes through the whole movie. So though, they were obviously supposed to be kind of our protagonists, but when he started killing him, I was like, this just got, like, it made it
because he has good one-liners.
Yeah.
He's pretty
Psycho
funny.
Cop. It reminds me of Psycho
you're right.
Cop.
You're right. It's more in line with Psycho Cop.
Very much in line with Psycho Cop.
But he's funnier, this guy, But, it's a fun set. And it's a good movie to watch at a festival late, too. Like, it definitely kept your attention. It has amazing opening credits.
Oh, my gosh. The opening credits were phenomenal. And the audience was howling.
Yeah.
So there were definitely a lot of people that it was really, really hitting with.
Speaking of movies that'll keep you awake, I believe you might have seen this one, Ryan, and I talk about it a little bit on the next one, but man, I want to encourage you guys. Revenge is a fun.
I love Revenge.
Revenge is like so good. I explained, I start right after we watched 3 hours of Joe Bob talking about how everything's exploitation, and then I went straight into this, and I was like, oh my god, every element you could exploit in a movie, they do it, but they do it with a bit of a twist and a slightly different vision. In the last 20 minutes, the way they shoot the last 20 minutes of this movie is so freaking fun, and that's why I kind of threw some 10 to Midnight love at it. There's a couple other good movies, but it's just really fun. It's cool that's coming to Shudder. That's when I think people are going to have a blast, especially if you're put off by the idea of a rape revenge film. I think what you can look forward to is a slightly different viewpoint. It's still gross at times, and it has to be because you're meant to be. But then when it keeps going, just stick with it because it's when
the control of power shifts, that's when it becomes an audience pleaser.
Yeah, it's really.
Well, I love here in Los Angeles at the end of the month. There's a 4-movie marathon that starts with Revenge, The Descent.
On 35 with Neil Marshall.
With Neil. Mad Max Fury Road, the Chrome edition.
Which I haven't watched yet.
And then closing out with Aliens.
Oh my gosh.
This is at the Arrow.
It's for Cinema
in
Void.
Santa Monica on April 28th.
I wouldn't stay for Aliens at that point because I've just seen it too, but the other ones,
I would go to Descent in 35.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
And with Neil. And it actually has a little bit of a vibe of those in terms of its intensity. It's probably my favorite thing I saw at the festival, if I'm really honest. In terms of like boldness. It's like, I was explaining to them, it's exactly like when I saw Royal, where it's like, whatever you make next, I'm in. From the style of this film.
Corley is definitely a vision.
Yeah, and she's actually going to be at that screening, the director.
Oh, cool.
So
Very
Revenge
cool.
too.
Yeah.
That's even more reason if you're out there.
Did you see The Endless?
I'd already seen it at Tribeca.
Oh, I saw it at the festival.
A while back,
really, I loved it.
Can you talk about it without spoilers?
I
That's
can't.
the question.
I can't.
No,
All I'm going to say is just like it was very fun to watch. I enjoyed how trippy it was,
and it furthers the mythos of those two directors.
Yes, there's mythos.
And they're going to be coming on the show at some point, so we can probably dive in deeper by then. But it's a well-made film. It's fun.
I also saw the other premiere there was the Wolfman's Got Nards, which is the Monster Squad documentary.
Which I've been told I was in, but I didn't get to see.
We are both in it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I believe they tried to get Ryan, but he was too busy apparently, or schedule conflicts, if you will. Yeah. I thought this was really excellent. I mean, I guess you could enjoy it if you don't know what the Monster Squad is. There'd be a curiosity, but it really is aimed straight for the kid in you that grew up with this movie. And I thought the thing that was most fascinating about it, because it goes through the whole kind of history, like how everybody got involved, how they produced it, what happened after, and then it, of course, becoming a cult hit. And Andre Gower, who played Sean, the main character, is a big part of this documentary as well. But what's really great, I mean, they got pretty lengthy interviews with both Shane Black, I'm sorry, I drew a blank there for a second, Shane Black and Fred Decker. And Fred was not keen to do it, really. They got him at the last minute. And what's great about that is that his interview is so raw and candid. his thoughts on this movie. And it's and I never realized that, but it's funny because they show a montage of like, you know, the resurgence and all these reunion shows and like kind of that. And in every photo of those, you see Fred and he just doesn't look happy at any of them. And he's very candid. He's like, this is the best movie I've ever made. But it's hard. I can't separate what the experience made me feel with, like, you know, he gives all these analogies. Like, it's like, you know, shooting for that hoop that you know you're going to slam dunk in 86 and it doesn't land until 2006. Like, it doesn't really do me any good. He's like, I just can't, I love that people love it, but I can't see past that ever.
It's like Carpenter's thing, I think.
Yeah. And so I thought that angle was really interesting amongst so many people that it meant a lot to, and kind of celebrating and talking about it. So it's a lot of fun. It just started its festival run. I'm sure it'll be out hopefully later this year, but a great love letter if you just love the Monster Squad. Totally worth it.
Yeah.
Are you guys up to date on The Terror, the show?
Oh my gosh, I am.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't. I've got a slew of things I want to talk about
I'm actually
movie-wise, but I have to
past.
catch up on Terror.
Yeah, I'm past.
What?
Because
What?
I loved the first episode of the
Bekah,
Terror.
Future Past? What's happening?
Future Past. I have completed the entire series.
What?
What?
Because yes, I know. I loved the first episode so much. I watched the first episode and was like,
Stole from Thailand?
Ryan's
What
throwing
happened?
caps at me. No. So
How many are there? Because I'm on 4.
I'm on. I think there were 7 or 8. I finished
only
the
7
whole thing.
episodes?
Yeah, it's not that long. I finished the whole thing.
It's only one big book. So.
I thought
Yeah.
it was 10.
I don't
It might
know.
be 10. I watched them all like back to back. I watched them all in like 3 days.
Wait, back to how you got these.
How did you watch them all?
You sign
Did you?
up for AMC Premiere. And seriously,
they
it
just
was
dump
just
it
like
all onto
it was
AMC
like
Premiere?
an app that
Oh.
I got through my Roku, and for
10 episodes.
$4.99, I got
episodes.
the entire series in one lot, and so I binge watched the whole thing in 3 days. It's amazing. I
All right, don't
loved
tell
it.
me
Don't
anymore.
know if there's 10 episodes, but you know that you finished a show.
I just kept playing, dude. I don't know. It was just continuous.
I mean, it's still slow run. Like even episode 3 had quite a bit of horror, and then 4 kind of had none. And so I was like, oh, it keeps teasing a little.
Right.
But I'm really into it. Like I'm just curious where
I
it's
gotta
going to
catch
go.
up this
No, I'm really I loved it.
All right.
And I loved the tone. And even, I mean, I can't say that it ever gets like, it never feels like it turns into a full out horror movie, but it's always really terrifying and tense.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I absolutely loved where it went.
Man, I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah,
me neither. I've never even heard of
$4.99
this.
a month.
Jesus.
You can get AMC Premiere, and like I plan to cancel after a couple of months, but I was going to play around with it because there's a couple other shows on there that I like. But that was the incentive. Like for signing up, you receive this all in one swoop. So I was like, for $5, I'll watch it all at one time because I was so jonesing after the first episode.
Shit.
Yeah.
Damn. All right.
Ryan, what do you got
I
for
paid
us, man?
$24.95
For one.
for a
one a
whole
week.
season on iTunes.
$4.99. You get the whole enchilada.
I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I'm all caught up on Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Oh, right on.
And I think it's delightful.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
delightful.
fun. It's a lot of fun. I think they brought in the Knights again, and I was like, oh, God, guys, what are you doing? But they wound up paying that whole thing off, and I'm very curious to see where they go with it. But it's fun. If this season ends up being the last season, then I'll be completely satisfied.
Right, it's kind of at that point where.
Yeah.
But the one gag I wanted to bring up was the
baby? The baby in the
Well, we already
body?
talked about the baby in the body.
The baby in the body is pretty stellar.
typical Evil Dead
Yeah, that was
nonsense.
great.
The way that Ash decides to capture a baby and bring it back
Yeah.
is fairly. Let's just say he puts it where it came from.
You know what's funny is watching.
Wow.
Well, Bekah,
Wow.
that could be complicated.
I
Right?
know. it
There's
could
many
be.
ways for it
There's
to come
many
from.
ways
Yeah.
to remove a baby.
The fun thing is the kid pops by the living room every time Sierra and I are watching it, and she'll come in and she'll laugh at Bruce Campbell.
Yeah,
and
that's so
she's
great.
just like, and I'm like, honey, you can sit down. I mean, like you'll love Ash.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy Ash. So it's Ash
Wait,
is
she hasn't done
reaching
Evil
a
Dead 2 yet?
No,
Oh,
no,
so you gotta
no.
get her caught up. to
I
speed.
showed her Army of Darkness when we first became a family,
Yeah.
and I think she liked it. But I mean, like now that she's becoming a little bit more aware teenager, she seems to. Ash is obviously reaching a completely different generation now.
Yeah,
so
that is kind of cool.
with his stupidity.
Yeah, and he is stupid.
Well, the funny thing is, we had this in joke in the family where I introduced the girls to toasted Pop-Tarts.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I
I
love
They
that.
read
had
your Twitter
they had no
post.
idea.
But
So
that's what you're
literally
supposed to do with them.
that night, we pop in Ash vs. Evil Dead, and his daughter makes Ash a toasted Pop-Tart, and he goes, oh, they're so much better toasted. He's like, I didn't know that. I was like, oh my God, what is
How
this
many
weirdness?
people in the world do not know that you're supposed to toast Pop-Tarts?
I don't know.
That's
It's
crazy.
very-
I think we're about to find out half our audience.
I know,
Maybe.
Jesus Christ,
Wait, they
guys.
go in the toaster?
And what you do, friends of listeners of Shockwaves, is you threw a little butter on the frosting.
Yeah.
And get
But
it nice.
doesn't that make
Delicious.
your toaster catch on fire?
No, Bekah,
No, after
you
you
put
pull it out.
Oh, okay.
And then it melts on it while it's
You
hot.
pull out and
the
then
way
you
you do
I thought you were
toast.
using
You
it to
pull
like,
out and then you butter it.
I thought you were like browning the Pop-Tart with the butter, so I was thinking of it much more of like a saute in the toaster.
Auntie M.
I'll drop a couple titles really quick.
Sure.
Because I got sick one day. So what do you do when you're sick? You watch Warlock movies. So I bought the Warlock trilogy thanks to Vestron.
How far have you gone? Because
I got the 2.
I'll tell you, I like 2, but I've started Warlock 1 like 10 times.
Really?
And I can't make it like
Oh no,
That was
10
Warlock.
minutes
like-
in, and I'm like,
Oh, Warlock's a blast.
That
I
was like
think
a
Really?
breeze for me.
Okay.
I mean, it's a lot of running around at a farm for
Yeah.
a stretch, but
Well, that was the thing, that when they get to the farm incident, you think it's the end of the movie. They're building up to the great showdown with the Warlock, and then the Warlock shows up, and then another 30 minutes of movie keeps
Yeah.
going, and you're like, oh my God, come on. So Warlock was never one of those films that I cherished as a teenager, but I have a newfound appreciation for it just because everybody goes for it.
Yeah, the
Everybody
first one's
just
fun.
Julian Sands just goes for it. Everybody in the cast just goes for it. Warlock 2 is a fucking mess.
Yeah.
see, and that's what I
That-
liked.
I never liked Warlock.
But I was 12 when it came out, so what do I know?
There was a great moment. I forgot who they got. You got the main. You got the captain from Lethal Weapon, and he's playing this kid's dad, and he's trying to track somebody down. And there's literally a scene where he's being, I think it's him, and it's being tortured, and someone's like, give me the stone. He's like, you can't have the stone. The guy goes, give me the stone. He goes, you can't have the stone. He goes, give me the stone. I'm like, how long is this going to keep going?
is it not a ring? It becomes a stone?
I don't know.
Because in the first
It
one,
was-
it's the ring.
Well, they were going after multiple stones for various reasons because there are slayers of warlocks.
I guess they had to build the mythology out more.
It's just garbage.
The last one, Leaving Las Vegas, is super creepy. the opening scene where he's it's Warlock cutting Elizabeth Shue's butt as a pimp, and it always freaked me out because it's like it's Warlock. It's how it opens. Like the movie opens with Julian Sands cutting her with a razor blade, and super creepy. But I keep thinking it's Warlock.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
Okay.
so watch them in that order.
That's
Oh, God.
wild.
Leaving Las Vegas.
That is totally
I couldn't get to Warlock 3, so I threw on Godzilla vs. Megalon, which is
Which one is this?
the 1970s, right?
This is a 73, and I realized that this is one of my favorite Godzilla movies, like ever, because it was during that kind of Godzilla is a live-action Saturday morning cartoon character, and in this one, you've got this undersea world that is going to wage war on people who are on land because of nuclear testing, and they're really pissed off, but no one thinks in the undersea world, well, hey, maybe we should just kind of go up to the land people and say, hey guys, we're down here. Could you not bomb us anymore? But instead, they send Megalon to basically incite war, and then Godzilla comes along, and he's like, hey, guys, can you not do that, please?
In that voice.
Yeah, he's like, come
Godzilla
on.
voice.
And then meanwhile, you've got these two inventors and their kid. I don't know exactly what the dynamic is, but they created this robot that goes by the name of Jet Jaguar.
That's a great name.
Jet Jaguar can grow to Godzilla size. And so you've got Godzilla and Jet Jaguar taking on Megalon, but then another monster comes in. I forgot. Oh, I'm blanking on the name. But he comes in. So you got like these three kaiju plus a robot, all duking it out. And it's just one of those movies that I remember being on WPIX Channel 11, and I was a kid, and it was just Godzilla acting like a human sometimes. Like he would like wave, and he'd just be like, hey, I'm over here. Or he would like give Jet Jaguar kind of hand signal instructions of like, hey, I've got this.
They're
I'm going to
shaking
take him
hands
out.
in a photo.
They're
I just
shaking
saw it.
hands in a photo.
Yeah.
That's at the very end when he was like, thank you very much for your service. It is such a beautiful film. I love it so much.
This is the Godzilla that I could, with innocent eyes. The innocent eye Godzilla.
And I think that is why I like it. He's got kind of a snout like a cat, and he's got these innocent eyes.
Yeah.
So interesting thing about this movie, and I don't know how I remember this, like this is what replaced calculus in my brain years ago. When this film was sold in, I want to say Scandinavia or certain parts of Europe,
I already
they
love where this
sold
is
it
going.
under the title King Kong and Godzilla have a date in Tokyo. And so for a large chunk of the world, that is the title that it was released under. Godzilla and King Kong have a date in Tokyo.
Wow.
And so I always remember that
a poster
title.
with that title would be badass.
And I don't, King Kong's not actually in the movie.
But it's probably a guy who looks like it.
There's no King Kong.
Yeah.
And in the poster, Rob's got it pulled up, but it's basically got Megalon and Godzilla duking it out on top of the World Trade Center towers.
As they should.
Yeah, seriously.
That's pretty cool. It's great art for this, yeah.
And then the other title I just want to bring up, I watched Unearthed and Untold, The Path of Pet Cemetery. Because I'm about to embark on the Michael C. Hall audio version of Pet Cemetery.
Which it just came out, right?
Which I've heard is kind of amazing.
I'm really excited for that. So I thought as a fan doc, it was very well done. Everybody that needed to be represented was represented. Every once in a while, there would be kind of, no offense to the participants, but there would be kind of one random person. I had no idea who the heck they were. They were obviously like friends of the director and just needed to kind of, Rob, you and I know this. We just to kind of fill in some, hey, just say this.
Yeah.
Just say that they found this, they found this location through, lucky means. But it's very well done. It's very well done. Some great,
How
cinematography.
long is it, though?
Hour and it's like 90 minutes.
Yeah, see, I'm almost like, this is not to knock them at all, and I think these same filmmakers are actually doing one on the 1990 It right now, which I will, of course, watch the shit out of. Yeah. But isn't it funny how, like, this Pet Cemetery really deserve a full-length documentary about it?
It doesn't.
It's the thing now, right? Like, when we did it, we were doing Scream and Psycho, franchises, yeah.
I will say there were things that I learned.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the film was born of the writer's strike. Paramount needed something that was ready, had a filmmaker, and they just kind of pushed that through right away. There was one executive who fought to make Pet Cemetery somewhere else. Then she bounced over to Paramount, and then she fought to make it there. They shot down the prospect. Writer strike happened. She was like, guys, this is ready to go. And they were like, okay, great.
Do they touch on Pet Cemetery 2 at all?
No. I think they just lead up to the opening of Pet Cemetery, the opening and then the worldwide box office. And
with that history, I love, it's like a movie they didn't want to make. They do it because of the writer strike. It does so well that they bring, was it Mary Lambert? They bring her back within a year to do the sequel with Edward Furlong, who's hot off Terminator 2. To me, that's a funny story or an interesting story at least.
Unless I missed that part. I watched it kind of in chunks because I was like, I can't sit down and watch the whole thing. So I watched it in chunks, but it's really well done. I mean, you got both the kind of fan perspective, the industry perspective, and then the locals. I mean, Pet Cemetery was production that was integral to Maine. Stephen King fought to shoot that in Maine. So what I thought was really cool is they tracked down even just the periphery characters, like the woman who was at the car rental desk and, the girl that played little Tasha Yar from Star Trek Next Generation.
Yeah.
Just all that kind of stuff. So it was
very well done. I wonder if they'll shoot the new one in Maine. I wonder if that means. I guess I'll just leave that one up to the cosmos. That'll be next year, probably. That film, right? Not this year.
Next year. It's dated for next year.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to that because we like the creators.
But I watched this on Shudder, and I guess it's coming out to Blu-ray.
I think Synapse Films is doing it.
I think.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Cool. Was that it for you, man?
I also rewatched it and Blade. And Child's Play.
Oh.
What are we, Letterboxd?
Your brief thoughts?
3 stars, 2 stars, I'm done.
This is what happened with Blade. So we popped on the last episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead, and it said, newly arrived Blade. And I was like, honey, we got to watch the first 10 minutes of Blade because it just gets me so hot. And then we watched it, and she goes,
foreplay. First 10 minutes of Blade.
It's so good. And then she's like, I kind of need to watch the whole thing. I'm like, I do too. And we just sat there and rewatched all of Blade, and it's so good.
That's a fun movie.
It is so good. It holds up so well. And I love Guillermo del Toro, and I love Blade 2. But I kind of love the first Blade more.
Wow.
I'd have to see them back to back.
Yeah,
I mean, Blade 2 has more of the
kind of horror,
kind of eye candy and visual
it's
style.
More elegant, but the first one is
Steve
a pretty
Norrington's
fun,
Blade is gritty as fuck. It has just a bad temper about it.
And how much do you want to see that Blade and a good Ghost Rider in the same world? Like
Oh
a
my
dark
God.
world,
That sounds
not done in the
amazing.
comic booky way.
I
I can't remember what it was. I went to a screening of some sort, and it was all effects guys, and one of them introduced me to their friend Steve.
Yeah.
I started talking to him, and he was really cool, and then I realized it was Steve Norrington.
Yeah.
And I said, I was like, dude, I got to get you on my podcast. He's like, anytime, man, anytime. So I'm going to have
Let's do
to
it.
follow up on that, because he also left the business over, what was it, League of Extraordinary
Because
Gentlemen.
he got in a fight with
Connery.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
They looked, wasn't it like a physical fist fight? I think
I remember hearing
I think they both, that was
Weirdly
Connery's
enough, I didn't even hate that. I remember seeing it in theaters going, that's kind of fun. I know it was a mess,
It was
but
a
it was
mess,
still
but
fun.
it was still like I've watched it
Great character.
recently, and it's still,
I will follow up and see if I can find him.
You should.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I also want to. I want to
I'm
hear
thinking
about
commentary with all of us in a room watching
Oh
Blade.
my gosh, that sounds
I want to hear
amazing.
all because I know him and Wesley didn't get along either. I mean,
man, those stories.
It's. I mean, Blade is a gem, and also Steven Dorff in that movie is the MVP.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he has a lot of fun
so
in that.
good.
One other thing is a plug for a book that Bekah mentioned a while ago, Mike Vaughan's Strange Cinema. I read the entire
you were reading
thing
it on the plane next to me.
because we were about to do our episode on
That's
weird movies.
a tome. How did you read the whole thing?
I kind of skim read the ones that I had seen, but what I was doing it for was to find things, because we're always looking in the weird places, listening to shows like you guys are, for trying to find movies you haven't seen. I probably have about 30 or so marks on the book now.
Yeah, there was
and I'm
literally a dozen deer.
He was
what
just
do they
watching
call
me
it? Deer
going,
tags?
deer
Dog tag or dog ears.
dog ears.
And I was like, geez, man. He's like, oh no, these are all ones I'm going to check out.
So now I'm going to write them all up and then I'll pass the book to the next person. But,
awesome.
but I will say, glaring oversight on Mike Vaughan, and I did write to him. I said, no possession in that book. Like of all seriously, that would be the first one and you would think of weird cinema. But
Elric invited Joe Bob Briggs to a possession date.
I did. Joe
was
Bob.
amazing.
Yep, we're going to do that. And let's just say before we end this one, our interview with Joe Bob or or hangout with Joe Bob, I guess is one of the most fun things we've got to do. So
you're gonna have him back on anytime.
I know.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it.
Ryan, but
So-
did you see his tweet to us?
Yeah, he tweeted at us.
He said we asked hard
started
questions.
following me. That's awesome.
But the
sorry.
big teaser for the episode is I got to the bottom of what aardvarking is in his references, and he would always go, "This film has some aardvarking, so don't worry, you will get to the bottom of aardvarking." That's all you need to know.
I will say I'm going to save my review until the week after we do the Chattanooga episode next week. I picked up Howling 7.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait, we should watch it as a group.
That,
I
trust,
agree.
It comes up.
Wait,
You guys want to come
Howling
over
7,
and
yes.
watch Howling 7?
What is it on? How do you have
VHS. It's only on VHS. It's not available on anything else. And actually, if you search Howling 7 and try to buy the VHS, or I'm sorry, it did come out on DVD limited, but they were like $175.
Okay. Don't
you
do
can get
that,
the
people.
VHS for about $100, but I searched for the international title and found it released under the international title on VHS on eBay, and I bought it for $9.
Nice. Save it.
So,
Save it.
Howling 7.
Here's Joe Bob's tweet to us immediately after the show. You guys are tough. Yes, questions that require actual answers with levels of detail known only to uber nerds. Someday we will look back at that interview and realize we have wasted our lives.
all caps, wasted our lives.
Yeah, because
And
we
that
went
is
pretty
the
deep
message.
cuts.
I mean,
But
he was pretty
did.
surprised, actually.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun, and also seeing his exploitation breakdown that he did for a couple
Incredible.
hours. It's just
Incredible
it was
lesson.
like a total history lesson. It was so in depth. It was mostly set in pre-1950s movies.
Yeah.
It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah.
But what a cool dude.
Excellent. All right, well, we'll be back after another word from our sponsors.
Tonight's episode of Shockwaves is brought to you by the upcoming horror movie The Endless. Brad Mesca at Bloody Disgusting says it's strange, bizarre, twisted, manipulative, and completely original. Everything horror fans keep begging for. Acclaimed filmmakers Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson return from their 2014 cult hit Spring with this mind-bending supernatural thriller about two brothers who revisit the UFO death cult they escaped as teens, only to find there may have been truth to the cult's otherworldly beliefs all along. In theaters now from Wellgo USA. Check for Showtime's TheEndless-Movie.com. And keep checking the Shockwaves Facebook page because we will be giving away some awesome merch and copies of The Endless soon, including a limited edition blacklight poster and copies of the Blu-ray. I have seen this movie and it is awesome.
Today's episode of Shockwaves is also brought to you by Shudder. Brought to you by AMC Networks, Shudder is not only a premium streaming video service, but an experience unlike any other. Created for fans of all degrees of thrillers, suspense, and horror, Shudder is home to the largest and fastest-growing human-curated selection of high-quality, spine-tingling, and provocative films, TV series, and originals, and there's always something new and unexpected for Shudder members to explore.
Premiering only on Shudder this week is the new limited event series Born to Kill. Sam is embarking on his first romance with fellow teenager Chrissy, who's moved to the area after family turmoil of her own. But things are about to take a much darker turn. Beneath the surface of his charismatic persona, Sam is experiencing more than the usual teenage angst, a psychopathic urge to kill. His family and friends have no idea what he is capable of. Only his victims know the chilling truth, and they're not talking anymore.
Ooh, Born to Kill features a terrific lead performance by Peaky Blinders' Jack Rowan and a stunning, moody look. Born to Kill is your next binge-worthy series and is now streaming only on Shudder. Shudder is available for $4.99 a month and $49.99 with an annual membership, but our listeners can get a free month by entering promo code SHOCK at checkout. Go to Shudder.com today and find the best collection of thriller, suspense, and horror available to stream anywhere.
In just a few weeks, the Shockwaves team is heading to Texas Frightmare, and we hope to see all of you there. Texas Frightmare is the Southwest's premier horror convention, and it's now celebrating its 13th year. They always have the best guests, the best panels, and you don't want to miss it. This year's guests include Clive Barker, several of the Cenobites, including Doug Bradley, all the kids from It's Losers Club, Tobin Bell, Shawnee Smith, Ron Perlman, Charlie Band, Brad Dourif, Katie Featherston, and many more. Plus, the Shockwaves team will be there moderating all the fantastic panels. We have a live Shockwaves show, and we'll be doing Dead Right Horror trivia. Head to www.texasfrightmareweekend.com and get your tickets now. Elric Kane really wants you to come touch his face.
Okay, we're back, and I'm very excited because we have a very special guest with us today, an up-and-coming filmmaker. I'm so glad that somebody at some distribution company decided to give this gal's first movie a chance, and I'm talking about myself, unfortunately.
Miracle.
As a joke. But no, sincerely, Imitation Girl. It is now out on VOD, and next week we're doing a limited theatrical through Dread Central Presents, the label that I'm running, and I'm happy to have the writer and director here. This is her first movie, Natasha Kermani.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And the reason this is going to be fun for me is because we just realized a few seconds ago before we came on is I don't actually know Natasha's background as a filmmaker. I don't know what kind of films she grew up loving, any of that stuff. Literally, and I've told her this, Imitation Girl was literally a movie I saw on my very first day of doing acquisitions, and I was just watching a bunch of stuff, and I kind of saw it sight unseen, and just within a few minutes, I just was very mesmerized by the whole thing. And then I didn't realize it was a female filmmaker at all. I just was kind of into it, and I love Lauren Ashley Carter, who is carved out quite a name for herself, especially in low-budget independent films. She's in a lot of Mickey Keaton stuff, and I loved her in Jugface.
Yeah, I'm in love with Lauren Ashley Carter.
Like, she
is just gorgeous on screen and mesmerizing, and I love her.
And this movie has her twice, playing two different roles. And so I just really fell in love with the film immediately and was like, I gotta meet the person behind this. And thankfully you came in, we hit it off, and it became one of our titles, which I don't know why you decided to come with Dread Central Presents, but we'll get into that. So yeah, I mean, this is a very impressive first film, and I'm just curious where Imitation Girl came from, where you were in your life when this story, and why this turned out to be the first thing you wanted to do, because I know you have a history of shorts and all, but at the same time, it's not really a horror movie, and that's why I like it. When it comes to cinema, and I know Elric and I talk about this all the time, it's like, we love the genre and what you see there, but I'm always curious about the edge. How far can you bring genre fans to be like, yeah, but have you seen this? Because this is really different, or this is weird. It's not exactly scary, but it's in that wheelhouse. And so, how did you come up with this weird movie?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I was coming from a bunch of shorts that were all genres, so science fiction or horror or somewhere in between, which I love that you're saying that. It's like kind of the space that lives between the categories is kind of where I often find myself. But this was actually coming from I wanted to do a series of 3 short films that was all about different forms of imitation. So it was actually called Imitation Girls, and it was 3 different types. And this story was born out of one of those three. And Lauren and I, I was just curious, like, can we pull off the doubles thing? And we did a little short film in my apartment. I think I was shooting a commercial or something, and we had a camera package that was sitting in the living room. So we said, okay, come over, we'll get coffees for everyone. We shot a little thing, and we just really liked it. And it kind of went from there. And I think for me, I was ready to make a feature. That's really what it was, and I always knew it was coming. And my relationship with Lauren made me feel like, okay, I have a lead. Like this is possible. And I kind of had the infrastructure in place. I had my crew. I had my, all these kind of parts. And so it was just time. So we kind of looked at all of our resources, and I sat down and I actually wrote the whole outline. We're all creators here, right? So it's like you have an idea, you sit down, you try and get it out as fast as you can, and the whole thing kind of came out in an outline in probably like an hour or two, and but it was all themes and stories that had been kind of brewing for a long, long time. So basically, it came down, and what I knew is that there was going to be a dual storyline. So I knew that it was going to be Lauren playing against Lauren, and that I wanted an A line and a B line. And this sounds super crazy when I say it, but I wanted to make a structure that was more like musical structure. So I wanted something that played with the idea of counterpart. So in the original outline, actually, the B line, the aliens storyline, moves backwards in time.
Oh.
And we actually have original cuts where it was, not sequential. It wasn't linear. So basically, I had the two stories, and then it was about the puzzle of putting it together, and that was really the joy of that initial outline. So yeah, I would say it was time to make a feature, and I felt really good about my collaborators. And so I called up my producer and I said, hey, want to do some crazy shit? So we did. But I mean, we knew nothing about the industry, nothing. We were living in New York. We went to film school, so we knew how to make a movie. But I mean, I didn't know anything about distribution or sales. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a sales agent. We wanted to create something, and I wanted to take that leap from shorts to features. So
I was going to say, fill in the blanks because a lot of listeners out there want to know. They hear about I've got an idea, I got my producer, I made my movie, but they want to know everything in between.
Yeah.
So how did that financing come together? How long did it take to put together? What did you guys do? What were kind of like the essential ingredients to pull together the funding for the film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great question. So part of the reason I knew it was going to be dual storylines, because I knew I could probably raise enough money for a short, but I didn't think I could really pull together the money necessary to do a movie. So we actually shot the film 6 months apart. So we raised a little bit of money to shoot the first section, which was actually the alien storyline in New Mexico. And that was super bare bones. We shot it in 8 days. And it was basically a long short.
And all a tribute to Man Who Fell to Earth, because that's also shot in New Mexico.
I know. And also the mountain in the background is Cabazon, which is also Close Encounters. But there's a lot. There's a lot brewing.
A lot of alien stuff.
And Independence Day 2 was also shooting while we were there. So, it was like, hey, guys, whatever, not impressed. Yeah, so basically we had done shorts at that point, so it was kind of a well-oiled machine, and so we kind of treated it as two like mega shorts, which is not to say that it was easy by any stretch of imagination, but so the other essential part. It's very hard to be an island as a filmmaker. So I think part of the other reason this was possible, I have a production company in New York City, and we have an amazing team of about 10 to 12 people who are all incredibly talented individuals. And then we have, of course, Lauren and her network and all those things. So a lot of the production elements came from the production company. The production company also actually paid for a lot of stuff. So we had been making commercials for a few years and saving up money as we went. So all these things kind of add up, and it was pulled from a bunch of different places. Part 2 or 14 of this monologue is we actually did a fundraiser as a nonprofit. So we were taken under the umbrella of a nonprofit, and were then able to take tax-deductible donations. So from there, like a little bit here, a little bit there, you email every single person you've ever known shamelessly and ask them for money. And then you have a number in mind, and then you have your go number. And so we did. So that's how we did it. And then, of course, we used the New Mexico stuff to fundraise raise for the New York portion, which was a little bit bigger.
And which one was more complicated, or were they both equally as challenging?
It was all complicated. I mean, I would say, gosh, I don't know. It feels like a long time ago now. I mean, New Mexico was complicated, but in a lot of ways was a little bit more fun, because that's the kind of shooting that I love to do, which is you're out in nature, you have a pretty stripped down team, and it's really about getting out there on the day, and, you know, either the weather's going to fuck with you or not. And I like that a lot. That for me is a little more engaging. And New York was, you know, we were on a soundstage for 2 days, we were on location. And so it was a little bit more like conventional filmmaking in that way. And New York, we also had the two women meet. So that was a little bit more complicated with VFX, whereas the New Mexico part is really a lot more lyrical and soft, and it's just filmmaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess New Mexico was a little bit easier in that sense.
Regarding that, the two Laurens, but just in general, like visual, I was just so impressed with the visual effects and the way that you've handled a lot of that. And I know Jeff Farley, I think, did some of the practical stuff.
Yeah,
he did all of Drew Daywalt stuff. He's
dressed on
Bekah.
a bunch of my shorts as well.
I love Jeff.
Yeah, he's
Jeff,
great.
we love you.
But I'm just curious if you had experience with the commercials and stuff like that, because usually on your first film, I mean, I don't mean to make this broad, but it's usually not common for someone on their first film to have such an understanding of visual effects. That, I mean, they're very impressive. You know, the putting Lauren in the same frame together, and even some of the space stuff that's in there. And I mean, I just rewatched it before this episode. I was like, oh man, how did you pull that off on, you know, on a tight budget as a first feature? So did you have any sort of experience with visual stuff?
Yeah, I'm pretty technical. So it's a combination of things. A lot of my short films had very heavy VFX, so I was already pretty familiar with the workflow and kind of how to cover a scene. But the short answer to your question is prep. It's all about pre-production, and it's all about sitting with your VFX soup or your VFX artist or whoever's doing it. For us, it was Jeff Farley doing the practicals, and an artist named Brandon Roots, who's based out of New York. And he and I just sat and we mapped it all together. And so it's just pre-production. And obviously you have like a tiny, tiny fraction of the time that you should have to do everything. So you really have to be very specific and have it already cut and composited in your head about how it's going to all go together. But yeah, I mean, I had pretty extensive, I mean, I've been doing sci-fi forever, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think VFX is something I was always interested in. And in school, I spent a lot of time kind of learning from older students and trying to get as much of that information as I can. I think VFX is a really, really essential part of filmmaking, honestly. Even if you're not doing genre films, you still need to know it. It's just such a major part, and it's so related to staying on budget and on time. So I really think if you're a director, you need to have at least some basis in VFX.
Yeah. And this will lead back to your humble beginnings, which I'm very curious about. But part of this movie is in English and part of it's in Farsi. And so why is that? What is your background that you decided to...
Yeah. Yeah, no, my father's from Iran and his sister. And they, so they came during the revolution. They are immigrants. And... I think it wasn't as much of a direct thing that I was like, oh, we're going to rep Persian culture, because it's really not about that at all. I wanted a setting that the alien would feel welcome into, and so I liked the sort of double meaning of you know, they're all aliens, they're all sort of strangers in a strange land, and then the next step for me was that's just the culture that I'm familiar with and I'm comfortable with. So that's why they're there.
Now, did you have to teach anyone Farsi in the movie?
Lauren, I mean, she's incredible. She learned Farsi for this. She did not speak a word of Farsi. Wow. Yeah, she's incredible. So we sat with a tutor for a little bit, and then the two other actors were really great with helping her get through it. But she learned it phonetically, basically, like an actor sort of approached it. So she memorized the meaning, and then she memorized the sort of the phonetically how it sounded. Yeah, so pretty cool.
Wow.
But the real amazing part for me was, she must have found a way to correlate the meaning, and then through rehearsals or something understood where the other actors were. Because there's a scene where she's sitting and she has to react to the brother's monologue. And she's sitting there, she's reacting in real time, and it's completely corresponding to what he's discussing. So I don't know. She's amazing.
Wow. And so, tell us a little bit about, kind of your upbringing. Were your parents artistic people at all? Did they encourage kind of the filmmaking thing? Is it something you always thought you were going to be in love with movies and from a young age? Or
Yeah, I mean, so my mother is an artist. My mother is from Indiana. She's from northern Indiana on the lake, and she is an artist. She's a multimedia artist. So I grew up kind of as a black box brat, I like to say. Grew up around a lot of musicians, a lot of artists, art though, not film, like real art.
Yeah.
And so I think that the performing arts was always sort of a part of my universe. My father is a physician, so he is a completely different part of my brain, but just as important, I think. But he's a real cinephile. I mean, I think a lot of my love for film comes from him and his love of film and storytelling and all that. So I think it's a combination of the two. I mean, for me, it's interesting because it's like film is what it is now in the century that we're living in. But I think there's an essential sort of balance of your brain that is either you're on this track or you're not. So for me, it was more about just like the moment when you realize that you can do this for a living. And that was more the turning point than, it wasn't high school or it was a long time ago. I think I did an essay on Julie Taymor when in like fourth grade or something. You have to, it's like choose someone's profession. I remember going on like dial up and being like, a director can make X amount according to DGA rules, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, no, it was totally precocious and obnoxious for the teachers, I'm sure. But yeah, so it was a forever thing.
Right. What do you remember, like, when you were first getting into movies, seeing things as a kid? What were the genre films that really scared or had an impact on you? Because we all are obviously here because of that. And so I'm curious what it was for you.
Well, even the sci-fi.
Yeah. You seem to have much more of a sci-fi.
Yeah, it's funny. I really fell in love with horror more as an adult. I was very scared of horror movies as a kid. I was talking to my best friend that I grew up with, and I was like, "Yo, like, what movies did we like? Scary movies. We watched scary movies, right?" And she's like, "You were a little wuss. Like, you didn't want to watch any of that stuff. You got scared immediately. Like, I think I was scared of Scary Movie. Like literally the spoof of it." But no, I think definitely like the classics for me as a kid really hit me. So, like, of course, everyone says this, but The Shining was just a really spooky thing that stayed with you. And I think watching those as a kid, it lasted for days. And I think that's why it was hard for me to watch movies until I was more of an adult and had a little bit more control over my mind. Because you'd be sitting there and you'd just start seeing characters would start appearing, and your active imagination. I would say another movie that like really screwed me up as a kid, that is both horror and science fiction, was Event Horizon.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah. That I saw at a way too young age, for sure.
You are home.
Yeah, no,
I think that messed all of us up. And I mean, I was like 16 seeing it, and it just destroyed me.
Yeah. So. Permanent damage. Yeah. Permanent damage. I mean, like, I'm a little uncomfortable thinking about it right now.
I was a grown adult in this good shit.
It's a really scary movie. So I think like things having to do with hell or demons, or this idea of like absolute evil that you have just like no chance against, rather than like the Mike Myers or that, Freddy Krueger was scary, but it didn't shake me to the core the way that those more sort of cerebral ideas did. And that was
what about Jacob's Ladder?
Scary.
Did you ever see that?
No.
I think that one would scare you.
Yeah,
even
I know.
It's the scariest parts of Event Horizon in a movie for the whole movie.
And it goes for much
really
longer
creepy.
with them, whereas Event Horizon has everything like shrunk down into like 2 minutes of like, holy shit, what's going on?
And it's kind of sci-fi-ish too. It has a little bit of that tinge.
Yeah,
it's got some technology to it that definitely borders it.
Jacob's Ladder, that's a good one to revisit every couple of years.
I've got to revisit. I haven't seen it in a long time.
I'll lend it to you. It's a good one.
Yeah, no, I need to for sure. And I think also like the Hellraiser movies, like those things really fucked me up too. So
the one
I think
in space, that was your pick.
Space
yeah, right.
One day I'll get someone to admit that.
I like the space one.
Really?
Yeah, I actually do.
Were there sci-fi
no shame
movies
in that,
there? Like early sci-fi movies?
Oh yeah,
like that you
for sure. I mean, again, it's super. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Kubrick fan, but 2001, and in the film, you see a pretty obvious homage nod to the beginning. 2001 was huge. I mean, that was another one I saw when I was way too young. I think it was on TV. It was like a family reunion or something. And apparently I was just completely glued from the beginning to the end. I think it was like The Shapes.
I was going to say, it took me, I remember seeing that when it first came out because my parent, or not when it first came out, but I remember my parents renting it when I was really young and being so bored because I wasn't stoned and it wasn't cartoons. And I was just like, they're just lights. And I was so bored and I remember going to bed.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until years later I rewatched it in a theater and was like, oh, I get it now.
Well, House scared me. Much like the black hole scares me, like because that Disney movie,
Black Hole
much
is terrifying.
Scarier than anything else Disney was doing at the time.
And it still seems so modern. It's 50 years ago.
It's incredible. It's a masterpiece.
Years. You're like, how can you feel that up to modern?
It's a masterpiece. I mean, hands down. But yeah, I mean, I think I should also say I think my standard for boring is a little off because I grew up around performance artists. So like, I'm actually totally fine sitting for 20 minutes looking at static. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. My mind starts going.
I totally see the social relevance. What's going on?
I can tune out.
In Indiana, within this tube.
Exactly. But yeah, and I think, and genre aside, I think, seeing Apocalypse Now for the first time, seeing, Mean Streets was huge for me. So I think those obvious film school answers are as real for me as for everyone else.
New York.
So. Those are all New York answers. And,
Spielberg really isn't on the list for me. I know that's like sacrilege.
Totally.
I know it's sacrilege. And I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, I mean, I love Raiders as much as everybody else, but like, I think really what I loved was Harrison Ford in that shirt, you know? And I'm like, once you take him out, I don't know.
You can't deny Jaws, though.
Jaws, it's great, it's great, but it's not this magic.
Cool. I'll see you guys later.
It's all right. It's all right.
Well, what about filmmakers? Because I know, in particular, the one weird comparison I keep seeing on some of the reviews on Imitation Girl is David Lynch, which we consider a horror director to an extent.
Totally.
Some of the scariest things ever in his movies.
Well, that should have been my answer. Mulholland Drive fucked me up.
I'm more scared of Lynch films than I am most horror films.
Yeah.
Like they terrify me.
The new season of Twin Peaks.
He can do it from nowhere. He can go from zero to the weirdest and creepiest moment.
Yeah.
You could just be like, oh, I'm in a diner and I'm telling you about my dream and no big deal. And then by the end of it, you're almost having a heart attack. And I don't think any director can really do that.
Even like Inland Empire. I mean, like that was getting like completely panned by critics, and I was like, it's fucking terrifying.
Even his lows, he delivers nightmare fuel to some degree.
Yeah. It is nightmare fuel for sure. I think it's the element of chaos, and he has this random association that a lot of artists also have. And I think as audience members, we find that very disarming and very uncomfortable. So,
and he's a master of sound design, and that's where all best horror lies. So no one's better at mixing a movie than what he does.
100%.
And he's the big part of that. It's not like he's a huge with the music.
I think he sound designed all of the new Twin Peaks.
Oh yeah,
You see his credit in there.
It's pretty incredible.
So Lynch for sure, but what were some of the first filmmakers, even right as you were about to start going to film school, where there's a point where we start realizing, oh my God, these are John Carpenter movies. Like there's a voice behind several movies that you like. So were there any people that were an influence to you?
Well, I constantly am ripping off Wong Kar-wai. I should really start crediting him in my films.
I showed Chungking Express in a class recently, and it was great. I now know that like if I show that, 2 people's heads are now literally on fire because they're so excited, and there's about 18 others who are just like, whoa, what's the point?
Dude,
what
that
happened?
flight attendant
That's a great
scene.
one, though.
Yeah, no, it's such a great. He's got another great control of aesthetics. That guy,
he's amazing. And I love. I mean, for me, I think I was the only person who saw 2046 more than once in theaters.
That's sci-fi. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it is sci-fi. Yeah. So I think Wong Kar-wai, and I think Hong Kong cinema was a huge opening for me. I loved that. I fell in love with Jim Jarmusch in high school, which was huge for me. Again, New York.
And slow.
I jokingly say that because I went to film school in New York. So I know.
Where did you guys go?
I went to CUNY.
Oh, okay, nice, awesome, nice. And then so we're covered between the three.
Where did you go?
NYU.
Yeah. Excellent.
The most pretentious of them all.
My husband taught there, and I taught at Hunter at the same time.
Yeah.
So somewhere we've now covered every single.
Hunter is a great program.
I taught horror there for years.
That's awesome.
I loved it. And science fiction. I had a science fiction class.
That's
too.
dope.
Yeah.
And actually, Brooklyn College is coming up now. They have like one of the best. I'd say their program might be the best in the city right now.
Ooh.
They have a permanent soundstage in Steiner. And anyway,
Really?
this turned into a PSA for Brooklyn.
That's all right.
did.
New York listeners.
New York
looking for
film
tips.
schools.
Yeah, kids, don't spend the money. Go to Brooklyn College. But,
Yeah, we were just talking about filmmakers, if there was anybody else in particular. What about, I mean, I don't know how much you could talk about it, but I know your next project is a straight horror thing.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm
straight horror for me, though.
For you. But what is that? What do you consider straight horror? And what inspired that to be the next thing?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's loosely based off of a Buddhist myth. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a film called Onibaba. It's
Yes,
a Japanese film.
Very scary, actually.
So yeah, another brilliant movie. And I saw that, and it just totally got me into that world and into that path. And just thinking a lot of dark thoughts, because it was 2016 and there was a lot of bad shit happening. And I was thinking a lot about fear. And fear as a tool of manipulation, and fear versus the idea of free will. And to me, that's a horror story. I don't think it's a science fiction story. I think it's much more basic, and I think it's much more guttural in the way that science fiction tends to be a little bit more lyrical and a little bit more about. It's about stuff that you think with your brain a little bit more and less with your heart and your stomach. And this was a heart and stomach story. It's also based in medieval England, so that's horrifying right off the bat. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from, but it's loosely based off of the same tale that Onibaba is based off of. And it's just the struggle between having your life and your mind and your body governed by fear versus taking the path of independence and free will, which is sometimes much more difficult. So that's what it's about.
Wow.
And it's straight horror because it's it doesn't really have any anything that strays too far from horror elements. So there are demons, there is the sort of threat of hellfire and all that kind of stuff, but it's it never really goes into speculation. It's much more grounded.
Wow. You're crazy.
It's very crazy.
And much larger.
Much larger, yeah. So it's a step up. I wanted to do something bigger. I'm ready to sort of move past the micro, and micro is great. But I'm ready for the next challenge.
Holy smokes. What about, obviously you got to tour film festivals with Imitation Girl. What are some of the modern horror films or filmmakers that have kind of turned you on? Because again, it's like when you see a voice that pops up that you haven't seen before, it's exciting. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the fun of me finding your film. So who else of your peers or mm-hmm. people that are doing stuff now excite mm-hmm. you?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really amazing female horror filmmakers out there right now, and I'm very inspired by them. And a lot of them have not had the opportunity to make a feature, so they have short form work. But I really respect that, and I want to kind of engage with that some more. Let's see, contemporary horror filmmakers. That's a tough question, Rob. I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me circle back on that.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think my friends, a lot of my friends are doing really cool work back in New York, but it's mostly short form stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
What's the? I'm just curious. What's the New York independent film scene like now? Is it? Are there more opportunities? Are you finding opportunities? When I graduated from film school, I was just kind of like thrown out into the street, and they were just
I always found it very difficult.
Incredibly
which is
difficult.
why I moved out here.
Yeah, if you weren't interning at some TV studio, or if you weren't working on Broadway, or it was just it was incredibly hard. That's why I moved out here.
Yeah, same.
But there was still that contingent of friends who graduated, but they would just still kind of toil in the independent ranks and just try to sling stuff together. So I'm just curious, are the opportunities, are they as equal? I mean, I don't know if you spent a whole lot of time out here.
I moved here 7 months ago.
Oh, you moved out here? Welcome. I thought you were visiting us from New York.
I was getting ready to quiz you on, because I know, when I was living in New York, it was incredibly hard to shoot within the city. Permitting was just a nightmare to begin with, especially if you ever had to do anything exteriors. You just might as well steal the shot because it's cheaper to pay the fine than to actually get the permit.
Right.
And it was always a nightmare. And even the community, there was a small kind of New York City filmmaking community within horror, and obviously Larry Fessenden was doing his thing there, but it didn't feel
Lloyd Kaufman.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Our office was down the street from
Larry. From Larry. So you were in Dumbo?
Yeah, we were in Dumbo.
Nice. But it didn't feel as large or as connected as it does out here in Los Angeles. Like when I was there, it always felt very disjointed and not, I don't want to say as organized, but not as quite as connected as it is here. So
it's not. Yeah.
I was going to say, well, just to switch up the question, I mean, like the experience of now living in LA versus New York, what do you think in terms of the kind of being a filmmaker?
The honest truth.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm from New York, so that may answer.
You're a little biased.
I'm a little
now,
biased.
Are you from the city?
But she hasn't been to horror trivia.
Wait. How many of these 7 months have you actually been in Los Angeles?
He knows.
That's the other thing. Trying to track her down. I was like, wait, did you move here or not? Because you're never here.
Yeah, I've been working in New York a lot. No, LA is definitely much more connected. The network here is much more sort of connected. I guess it's a connected network, obviously. Actually, the horror scene and the genre scene here is a lot bigger. So, I was kind of struggling with Rob's question. Because there's really, there's Larry, obviously. Mickey was there for a long time. We actually we were on Pod and Darling, which was part of what opened up the community.
Oh, okay.
So I actually introduced Lauren to Mickey.
Really?
Oh, wow. So that little network was there, and we were all kind of like making genre, but there really wasn't a home for genre, which is why I think it's really cool now. There's a lot of New York City women's groups that are opening up and making little horror films and little challenges and that kind of stuff. So I do think it's growing.
Nice.
The scene has totally changed. New York is very production friendly right now.
That's good.
Yeah, because all the TV shows started coming. So they are just booming. They're just totally booming. When LA dried up, New York...
Oh my gosh. I remember when I was there, I was shooting for Fangoria at the time because we still had Fangoria TV was a thing, and that was like my full-time gig. And we had a laminated list of regulations of what allowed us to shoot on the street without a permit. And it was like a crew under 3 may not have a boom mic, must have a monopod, like you couldn't even have a tripod. That's camera, ridiculous. There was weight restrictions on the camera, and we carried it with us and had to check every single time before we got out of the van. And it was nuts.
That's hilarious. So I think it's definitely much more production friendly, but that's all on the logistics end. So I think for like below the line folks in New York are having a great season right now, and everyone's making a lot of money, and it's great. But I think for the filmmakers, the community is still here in a lot of ways. So the community is great, and sort of being able to meet people like Rob and you guys is great. And I think that will always be unique to LA because this is Hollywood and this is where it is. For me, spiritually, it's been an adjustment. I think there is something about being in a metropolitan area that's like a real booming city that you can just never really get anywhere else. So, trying to hold on to those things, but also trying to settle into yourself and your own brain.
She's wearing a New York City t-shirt, by the way. I just realized.
No, I totally get it. And I'm sure Ryan does too, because we've both lived there, where you're in New York and you feel like you're at the epicenter of the world. And then you move to Los Angeles and it's literally like a 60-mile sprawl of some cool stuff going on.
I'm also from New York, and I miss nothing about it.
Oh my God.
Nothing at all.
It's it has a pulse. Like if you get off, you travel there and you get out of the subway.
That pulse isn't that great.
How's racist New Zealand?
As somebody born in Brooklyn from New York.
You've been in New York like 3 times.
No, I haven't. I've been there hundreds of times, literally. But I just didn't go to college yet. But no, I mean, I feel the difference. I don't think LA has a pulse at all. Like, even though I really like LA, I've grown to actually rather love it, but it took like years.
Yeah.
Like, really, it took a long time because it's so spread out, and there's no center part where you actually feel like, oh, I'm in LA. I never feel like I'm, you know what I mean? You're always, but in New York, as soon as you get out, you just suddenly feel something. And I will say the last time I was there, I was like, I don't know if I could feel that for more than a few days, just because it just
it's intense.
It's hard to leave, though. You miss it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't miss the winters. Like, if you're here for a winter, when it's November and it's still like 100 degrees outside, then you're like, okay, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, totally.
No,
I totally agree. I mean, for me, New York, it's a place that'll beat your ass and you're just at the bottom of the bottom, and then 10 minutes later, it's making you feel like you're the king of the world, queen of the world. So, those kind of highs and those kind of lows are great, but maybe not the healthiest healthiest way to live your life. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I draw inspiration from a lot of different things. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of music and that kind of stuff. So I think whether you're in New York, LA, Paris, wherever, Indiana, you should be able to create, and it should be something that you bring with you everywhere that you go. So, it's just do you want to be at a bar till 6 a.m.? Some days you do.
Or leave at 12.
So,
I'll never understand.
I do love that. I mean, every time I go to New York, I try to meet up with, if he's available, Larry Fessenden. And it's always at the same bar where he wrote Habit, like 20, 30 years ago, whatever.
Is it the one that was in Chelsea? Because I used to see him.
I think so.
I lived a block away from that bar. I lived next to the Chelsea Hotel for like 7 years. I lived in literally
Ferrera's place,
Abel Ferrara was there. We used the same pharmacy. You have never experienced New York until you've seen Abel Ferrara screaming at the pharmacist in front of you because his prescription's not ready.
Are you sure that's not one of his commentaries? I'm pretty sure.
That guy lives in Rome now. He has a whole different life in Rome. He just got married.
Whenever he wants.
He one of my students when I was at Hunter College ran the guitar shop that used to be in the basement of the Chelsea Hotel and had amazing Abel Ferrara stories. Anyways, Larry used to be at, and I can't even remember the name of the bar. It was this Irish pub that was on 21st Street.
Either.
It was like 21st and 7th, and he was always there. Because I lived
just taking a while.
Just
an Irish name.
But he was always there. So I hope he is still there all the time.
So do you consider yourself a New York filmmaker or just a filmmaker?
Just a filmmaker who loves New York, and New York is home, and New York gave me a lot of things. So I'll be always grateful to New York for that reason, and it'll always be home.
Okay, I didn't mean to turn it into a New York versus LA.
I know.
I love it.
No.
So Imitation Girl already came out on VOD, and I don't know how we landed on this plan. I think the idea was we're discussing. I know exactly. I was like, remind me what my strategy was. I believe the idea was, a lot of people. This type of movie is the sort of thing people usually discover on VOD, and so I think the idea was like, let's get it on VOD so that people can watch it as soon as possible, and then a month later, I want to give people the opportunity to see it on the big screen because, especially a lot of the stuff that you did in New Mexico is very beautiful, and I wanted, Elric's already seen it. I want people to be able to see it at least once in the big screen. And so the reason we had you on this week is to give people a chance to know that it's next week that it's playing in, I can't remember, something like 10 or 12 cities. I am sending you for California listeners.
Yes.
We're putting you in a car, and on April 18th, you'll be in Gardena, introducing the film there. Then on the 19th, you are in Santa Ana, Orange County at the, what's the name of this theater?
Frida?
The Frida, yes. You're so much better at this than I am. And then Friday, the 19th, we will be in San Diego at the Digital Gym Cinema, which is where Dread Central's home base. And so you'll appear in those three. And who's coming to Cleveland?
I think Nima is coming, one of the actors.
Right. So he's going to be there at Cleveland with our friend BJ Colangelo.
And this is super crazy. Did you know that Lauren is basically from Akron, Ohio?
Oh, no.
How did that come about? She and I were like, we're very...
It's because, well, basically, and I guess I can reveal this aspect, playing theatrical is impossible if you're an independent film. If you have Universal to distribute, different story, but it's impossible. And really, I don't want to get into specifics, but it's like the rules and regulations to play your film, even for a week, are ridiculously expensive and really unfair.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, there's no way to make money at all. However, what I thought was, we are used to an event style thing here where we go to the New Beverly and we catch a double feature one-offs. Or, one-offs. And so I was just like, well, let's just do once a month. It's less commitment for us as an independent studio. It's less commitment for the theater because they're only giving up one slot for their 5 screens showing Black Panther. Fine, but just give us that 7 o'clock on a Thursday night at the end of the month, and it gives people a chance to see it at least once on the big screen. And what we did was we found Dread Central writers or friends, people that we've worked with in the past, and started there. And it's like, well, let's book it in that city because that person can be there. They can give autographed posters away and get, gifts and, just fun stuff, Blu-rays. And so Akron was because of Jess Hicks, who was one of our writers on Blumhouse.com.
For us.
She's over there. We booked Cleveland, which isn't maybe an hour away. with BJ, and basically they both told me, I was like, it's kind of close. And I'm like, well, Akron is kind of snobby about going to Cleveland, and Cleveland is snobby about going to Akron. So if you do it in both, you will have two different audiences.
Wow.
And so I was like, that's good enough for me.
wild.
You got to know local politics here.
Pretty much. But really it was listening to the people that lived in these specific towns. I even opened it up to our group. Some of the ambassadors and people representing them, I've never met. They're Shockwaves listeners.
That's awesome.
So
I mean, I have to say that's part of the reason I was so excited to talk to you that first meeting we had, which apparently was your first day. Or your third day. Your third day.
Yeah.
I just thought that was such a smart way, because I think a lot of people are struggling right now. Like, what do you do with a tiny film? And so they're still trying to kind of squeeze it into that limited theatrical 4-wall system. And I think what you're doing is so smart, because it's going direct to the viewers and it's going directly to the fans. And I think that's really what we're moving towards, right? People who love a certain thing. We're not trying to do like a broad throw it out there, see what hits. Like, let's be targeted about it. And I love that. And the idea of making it a party too, I just love. I think that's so smart.
Well, I mean, the people that want to see it are the ones that are going to be most vocal, not an audience that I don't know in, some Ohio City.
But I also love that it's not just New York, LA, it goes to
that's a whole nother story.
Right. Well, that's
getting
like
a theater
the hardest.
in New York and LA is the hardest thing on the planet.
In LA,
But-
they're used to that 4-walling mentality,
Of
so they know
course.
what to charge.
But I
And
think
in
it's really
case you want to
cool.
know what 4-walling is, well, I guess you could Google it, but basically you have to pay for every seat in advance. And so it's like, if you're a little independent movie or a company and you have to buy every ticket for 7 days straight, it has to sell out every show for you to even remotely make your money back.
yeah, like you
Impossible.
can only break even. There's nothing
So
else you
really,
can
the
do.
only point is to say that your movie played in theaters, which is a little unfair. But then again, look, I'm not in that part of the business. I'm new to this, so to me, it's like, well, let's just do it once a month and have fun with it at least.
I love it. I think it's
money.
brilliant.
And so that's what we're doing. And also, I promise you a physical release, which a lot of people don't anymore. I have to have the Blu-ray DVD combo pack, quite frankly. So
It's the series.
So that's the deal. But anyway, we wanted you to be able to see it. And actually, if you're in LA, we're doing an LA premiere on the 26th, which is going to be free and open to the public. So just look, I'll share a link for it. And you should come join us and see it on the big screen.
It's going to be a big party.
I hope so.
It's going to be super fun.
Thank you, Natasha. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Coming on. Yeah.
Thank you.
And please tune in next week when we do our Chattanooga Film Festival episode. Don't miss it. And if you are interested in advertising on Shockwaves, please email us at shockwaves@blumhouse.com. Again, that's shockwaves@blumhouse.com.
And don't forget to leave us a star rating and a review on iTunes. Thanks.